Yeah, we're actually for us. So thank you, Jen. All right, so welcome everybody and good afternoon from the great state of Minnesota. We have the Minnesota 4-H Engineer and Design Challenge webinar from our state STEM team, and we're here to talk to you all about our great program that's in its 5th year. It's having amazing impacts and really involves a large number of youth and volunteers across the state. And so before we do that, we're going to introduce you to our team that's all online here with us. If my slides would advance, that would be helpful. Suddenly, it doesn't want to happen. So, okay. All right, so for whatever reason, oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so again, so I'm Mike Compton. I represent the state of University of Minnesota 4-H Youth Development, and I work with a great team of people as we move forward with all the things that we do in STEM, science of agriculture, and in the future, we're moving on to a natural resources deliverable. So let's just go from around the circle, so I'll pass the baton to the Northwest.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm Margot Bowerman, up in Northwest Minnesota.
Good afternoon. This is Brian McNeil, and I'm in the southwest part of the state of Minnesota.
Patrick.
Hi, this is Patrick Jarek. I'm an extension educator based out of Rochester, Minnesota in the southeast.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ann Stevenson, and I'm an extension educator based in the green section of your map there, the central region, which is where the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul are located.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Stry, and I am a 4-H program coordinator in Wright County, which is right in the middle of that green section, just west of the Twin Cities.
And I am Laura Christ. I am a County 4-H program coordinator in Kanabec County, which is on that very southern end of the Brown region in the Northeast.
And then Becky Meyer, she's also a regional educator up in the Northwest, or the Northeast there. And she was the only one unable to join us today. So we have a great team of regional educators and then our program coordinators as well. So that makes up our state STEM team. All right, so today we have a few goals that we're here that we'd like to accomplish with our time. We want to talk to you about the program overall. So you're going to hear an overview of what the Engineering Design Challenge program is and all the details of it. We'll talk about what the program objectives are, like what are the goals that we have and we have set for the program. You'll hear a little bit about the framework that was designed at the beginning, how the program came to be. And then we'll share with you specifics of what it actually looks like, some of those details. You'll hear about our evaluation approaches and results that we have achieved over the past 5 years. And then you'll get a perspective from a county level of what kind of supports happen in Minnesota. Our county staff are program coordinators, so you'll hear that perspective. We'll talk a little bit about partnership development and some of those key partners that we've built relationships with and what the future looks like for those relationships. Some of the staff supports that we provide our program coordinators and our regional educators, and then we'll give 10 to 12 minutes, and hopefully you'll have questions for all of us at the end, unless we did such a great job that you have no questions. All right, so you might ask, we're going to pretend that you don't know anything about, and when you see EDC, that just is our shortening up Engineer Design Challenge. So of what the program is. So we're just coming at it from an approach that you may not know anything about this program. And so when you hear that term Engineering Design Challenge, what it really is based upon is young people coming together to create what's called a Rube Goldberg machine. Now this term Rube Goldberg, what it really means is it's a complex contraption that performs a simple task. So that's at the core of what the program is, where kids come together on teams to create some kind of complicated contraption to achieve a simple task. And you'll hear more about that in a little while. And it's really about physics and engineering, and then the kids telling a story about their project. And we encourage humor and innovation and creativity when they share those things, and they keep track of their work through their journals. And then we offer showcasing opportunities at the county, state, and state levels. So I'll just share those pieces with you as well. So the program overall, the objectives are, there's a couple. There's this new model that's been around for the past few years, and it talks about helping young people thrive and really spark to get them excited about learning and start them down a new path that maybe they didn't know that they were interested in, or helping them move those interests to the next level. So that's really the beginning of what the program is, to get them excited about learning and opening some doors and some pathways to where they can go with STEM in the future. We'll talk about the science and engineering practices and the engineering design practice as well. That's really the core of the program, is young people working through a process of learning. So it's the skills gained through that process of learning, those 21st century skills and that development. And that's really at the core of what we want young people to take from the program. Now, we hope some of them will become engineers and scientists, but we know that not all of them will. So it's really those informational, those pieces, those skills that they gain through the program. And then we work to make career connections, at least through our state event. So they know that there's ample opportunity for them connected to STEM once they get into the working world. And then for us, the program also, we work to serve it as a first generation growth. And what we mean by first generation is any family or young person that's never experienced 4-H before comes into the program for the first time. So it's a really easy way to invite new people in, because it's an exciting, hands-on, fun program. And we continue to get emails quite often these past few weeks, especially, of new people being attracted to the program just from the ways that we've been advertising. So the engineering design process, all of you probably use some form of this in your state. So this is really at the heart of how we like our volunteers to work with the young people, and the process for the kids to work through as they work on their project. So, so beginning to ask what the problem is, in this case, whatever that task or the challenge theme is for the year, and then what are the ways they're going to create a machine to get there. So imagining what it could look like, how we're going to get to the solutions, coming together to create that plan, then actually do the creating. And this is where I would say the teams probably spend most of their time, is all that trial and error. Then also learning what works and what doesn't, and going back and asking more questions, and just following this process. So it's a really, really great process, and we have this be at the heart of what we ask the volunteers to do to lead the kids through it. Then we also have a more in-depth, just wanted to share that we also use this in some of our other programming, our Science Agriculture Challenge, and know that you can take that learning to the next level with the science engineering practices, which really then provides an in-depth experience for kids. So if you're interested in learning more about how we use that, you can reach out to me after this webinar and I can share that. And then, as you can see, we like to share that nice visual from Iowa State University, that do, reflect, apply, that fits right into the pieces I've been talking about. And it's a good representation of what we hope, the process that we hope young people will get out of the program. And then lastly, these are the main skills that we hope and strive for the young people to achieve when they are part of the program. So coming together to critically think how they're going to solve a task and a challenge. They showcase, so they do a presentation together. They have to collaborate, use some creativity. Then they have to learn to be flexible with each other. It builds those initial leadership skills, those social skills, and all those other pieces. So this is the other thing that we really pay attention to, and that we strive for the kids to learn out of the program. So I turn over to Brian really quick, and he can share with you, we have a logic model that we use at a state level.
Yeah, and I'll invite Patrick because I think we're going to tag team this. After a few successful years of the beginning of our program, we noticed we were getting to a point where young people were starting to age out of our level 1, as we called it. And so Patrick and I kind of put our heads together and thought we needed to create a logic model of what a level 2 experience would look like. So this logic model is based off of a level 2, a 7th or 8th grade and older experience, and developed this to help kind of guide as we started developing and putting together what that second level would look like through a youth experience. I think Patrick is going to talk about the 4 components that we really kind of wrestled with and put into this. So Patrick, if you're
Yeah, and keeping in mind that the whole focus of the logic model is learn and lead. This is a fluid document, so there's opportunity for change or growth as the program changes. When we were, excuse me, when we introduced level 1, it was specifically a Rube Goldberg style machine, engineering design machine that had the transfer of energy. When we developed level 2, one of the questions that came up was, how is this any different for high school kids than it is for the younger levels or the elementary grades? And so the level 2 incorporates not only the mechanical aspect, but there's a component of fluid power, which includes both pneumatics, which would be air or a gas, and hydraulics, which would be a fluid. There's an electrical component and there's a chemical component. And so we'll talk more about that in the program specifics, but just to give you that introduction, how this has changed from a level 1 logic model as compared to one that's reaching our older youth.
Yeah, thanks, Brian and Patrick. I'm going to pass the baton to Margot. And as my slide moves.
Thanks, Mike. Yep. So when we first were conceiving of this, it was about the time when next generation science standards had just been released, and we'd been working with those 21st century skills. And one of the places that we looked was in the Partnership for 21st Century Learning that came from the Battelle for Kids. And the part that they had really honed in on, or what we focused on maybe, were those 4 C's, the creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. And the recognition that learning and innovation skills are what separates students who are prepared for this increasingly complex work and life environments versus those that aren't. And so we really, again, focused on that creativity and innovation, critical thinking and the problem solving, and the communication and collaboration. And as the next generation science standards came out, and those the science and engineering practices, those core ideas and the cross-cutting concepts, we focused on particularly the engineering core idea. So waiting for Mike and his slides to catch up. So continuing on anyway, our STEM team at that time too, as all those things got released, we were charged then with developing an engineering program that would develop an interest in engineering through probably we were initially looking at a club format, but develop an interest in engineering through STEM clubs that would work towards completing an engineering design challenge each year. And in this engineering design program, we also wanted to develop those 4 C's. They were at the core, the heart of what we wanted to do in addition to the engineering design process. And really the engineering design process was our way to tackle the creative thinking and problem solving as well as the creativity.
I'll apologize. The PowerPoint is being really bucky right now, so we'll make it through.
We will. And so we originally conceived that we would have an annual engineering design challenge, and we started with the Rube Goldberg machine. In our original envisioning of this process, we were going to have STEM clubs that would form around completing the challenge, and we thought, well, we'll do Rube Goldberg for 2 or 3 years, but the Rube Goldberg program it really took off and young people as well as adults have really found it an engaging process. It's been challenging. It's taught, in addition to the 4 C's, it's really helped focus on perseverance and a sense of grit with young people. So we've stuck with this, the Rube Goldberg machine concept, and have developed, really fleshed that out a little bit further. But we began to work and synthesizing the work that we had done in other areas. We created this framework where we start with an explore and tinker level. And this is a way to build interest as well as skills and passion in young people in a particular topic, and for us, engineering design. So we started with the explore and tinker phase, which is we designed a workshop that was meant as an introductory level, that was meant to be highly engaging, attractive to young people, and expose them to a few different pieces that could feed into the building a Rube Goldberg machine. And in fact, one of those activities was actually to build a really simple Rube Goldberg machine. And then the next level after that explore and tinker phase is the build knowledge and skills. And this is where we created a curriculum with some folks in Purdue, or they're now in Purdue, Wang. But this curriculum builds the skills that will help young people meet some of those outcomes that we're looking for, not just in engineering design, but also develop those communication and collaboration skills. So we have a curriculum that supports our learning objectives for our program. And the third level in this, as we think about going up, is guided practice. And when we think about guiding practice, it's what our engineering design challenge is now. It's also what we think of too is what happens with FIRST Robotics. But it's where young people thought about this. Again, in our original conception too, we thought we would develop a pathway, and so people would kind of graduate from Rube Goldberg and move on to this authentic practice, or really a real world challenge. But people have both youth and adults have really appreciated the perseverance and grit and the different types of things that they've been able to learn through Rube Goldberg. So what we're doing now to develop that authentic practice piece is there is still other venues that they can progress onto, but what we've done with our challenge this year is to provide an opportunity for young people to think through something that have some real world applications. And the other thing that has been key is we've been developing this concept of the real world, or what's next, what's the point of doing a Rube Goldberg machine, is we've started to develop partners from engineering design partners that have been either higher education institutions or departments that focus in engineering, and as well as authentic real world businesses that work in the engineering design field. And that's what I have for my slides, Mike.
Mike, you're on mute.
So my computer is really, for whatever reason, running through Zoom is not working all that well. So we'll just continue to our slides this way. So as long as you can still see them. So thanks for being patient with us, everybody. We're going to pass it over to Patrick and Brian now to talk about program specifics.
Okay, well, as we had mentioned earlier, talking about the logic model, the 4 specific program or the categories. Again, there's the mechanical component. That's the one that you can see as the kids are building their machine. For the level 2, we incorporated a chemical component, and that's an opportunity for the youth to learn about chemistry in a safe way. So a chemical component in a machine could be something such as a baking soda vinegar mixture, creating a gas that would trigger a step. It could be using hydrogel, the water-based solution that's super absorbent as part of the machine. So safety is paramount, and we certainly have that as our standard. So from a chemical standpoint, safety is important. Electrical, low voltage, so that's battery powered, but we do want to see some sort of an electrical component incorporated into the machine build and the design. And again, we talked earlier about fluid power. So if you think about 2 syringes connected with a hose, that is fluid power, and very simple. There's the two components of fluid power, the gas version, which is just air in the cylinder, or the hydraulic version, which is liquid or water in the cylinder. And we tapped into the National Fluid Power Association as a resource. They're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They are hungry for young people to pursue degrees in engineering in that field. So it's a great way to offer that, that introduction. So
Patrick, can I throw something in here? Ann made a good point, and just make sure everybody knows, we started with a level 1, and level 1 was geared for those youth in grades 3rd through 6th, 3rd through 7. And as you stated before, after a few years of doing the program, those kids in those older grades, the 5th and 6th, started kind of aging out, and they started saying, what's next for me? And so last year, we developed a level 2, and that's what Patrick was referring to. And so a level 1 machine has just the basic mechanical components, where they're using a lot of different pieces to do their machine. And when they go into a level 2, we're asking them to add the other 3 components of electrical, chemical, and fluid power. So that's kind of the difference between our level 1 and level 2. And we just wanted to really up the ante and really challenge those older kids. And that's why those 3 new sections sound kind of complicated, but they're one to really challenge those older kids as they participate. Okay, Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. The other thing to keep in mind with the Engineering Design Challenge is that it is a highly accessible program from a cost standpoint. This is an offering where people are salvaging discarded or unused resources and repurposing them. You're not having the cost of buying a Lego robotics kit or something on that order. So as we're working with audiences and new audiences, and at times financial issues can become a barrier, this is all up to them as far as their innovation. And as you can see from the pictures, it's really fun to see what the design is and how they have accomplished their the construction of their machine. And also you know, everybody has the same task but a very different machine. The other piece is that there are specific restrictions or guidelines that are incorporated into our handbook that talk about machine size, talk about no advertising, no unsafe practices or profanity or anything like that. So there's a quality component that we've built in from the very beginning and have tweaked along the way.
Mike, if you want to go back to slide 19, we do have themes that really help the teams engineer or develop their machines around a task or a theme. So you'll see in 2015, we started with applying toothpaste on a toothbrush. And then we went to our next challenge in 2016 was taking a can and crush it and recycle it, adding a second step. 2017, we wanted teams to raise a flag and make it wave. And so we had a lot of questions about that. Well, how are we going to make it wave? And some teams would actually incorporate a fan. And so when the flag would raise, a fan would kick in and then make the flag wave. So it was kind of fun to see them really think about, how am I going to make this flag wave? Last year, our challenge was to plant a seed and water it. And you notice all of these are kind of a 2-step process. Now, this last year, we really wanted teams to challenge our teams. We really wanted to have some fun with a challenge. And so this year we took the concept of having a superhero save the planet, which might seem kind of vague, but it's really to get the teams to think about what are some real world issues that we could work on and do. So we know a lot of plastics are in the water. So how can that superhero remove plastics from the water? There may be something around aquatic invasive species or invasive species. So we really want to challenge teams to think about that real world issue and apply it to their machines and into a thing to make it solve. So that's kind of our evolution of our task as we continue to work on the program as well.
And I'll just add one more piece, that we have a defined number of steps. They have to have a minimum of 10 steps, a maximum of 20 steps. And that forces teams to work together to decide and discern which steps they're going to use in their machine construction. And as Mike mentioned earlier, that's all part of that teamwork and cooperation work. So it's not only the construction of the machine, but the process that was involved in reaching that.
We do have a handbook for each team or each level, so our level 1 and level 2 teams that really give those specifics, and I think that's learning over the years, kind of the questions people ask and making sure that we have the support documentation available for teams as they do this kind of work. They're all available on our website. So if you want to, after this, don't do it now, but after our presentation, to browse our website, and you can see those support guides and see the kind of information we've supplied in there to help our coaches and our teams as they work in this program. Anything else, Patrick?
I think that covers it.
All right, we're going to turn it over to Ann.
Well, let's unless Ann, do you want to talk about the state event? Otherwise, I can.
I sure can. So in our first 4 years of this program, the teams had the opportunity and the expectation that they would showcase their machine and have a judging kind of experience at a county fair or some sort of county showcase, however that looked. And then they had the opportunity, if they received a blue ribbon at the county level, that they could come and showcase at our Minnesota State Fair, which is a big to-do, a big deal, the 12 days leading up to Labor Day, so at the very end of summer. And we have a program where youth come and stay overnight and showcase project areas of everything, animals and general project areas. So we have that whole infrastructure in place, and I recognize not every state has the same thing, but that's what we have, and that's what we use. So we would have 4 different times when teams could come at State Fair, and 4 different encampments and showcase and be judged. And so they had another judging experience and a chance to see others, lots of media attention. So that kind of grew and grew and grew. And so prior to last year's, we knew we were ready for something a little different. We had grown, we had new partners. So we determined that having one big engineering design challenge showcase event would be just the coolest thing in the world. So we were able to partner with one of our state universities in the center of the state to host it, and that's the big gymnasium looking pictures you see there. So all the teams had the opportunity to come there. They no longer had to qualify per se to come. They could come. And we'll share a little bit of statistics about that in a little bit. But we had just an amazing turnout, far higher than we thought it would be, with a big majority of the teams. We had 54 teams, I think, across the state, with a big majority of them coming on one day. And so we had multiple teams being judged by multiple groups of people. And we also had industry partners who were present to talk about what their business does and how that ties into STEM and engineering, and just a whole host of other support activities that would happen while the youth were there. So that was a big one-day event. Anything else, Mike, you want to share about that I missed?
No, it was really amazing, that we got 36 teams of over 200 kids on a Monday in August to come and showcase and celebrate the learning that they've been working on. It was really an amazing experience, and we look forward to doing that again this year. So if anybody's interested in kind of the details of what that looked like and all those things, then just let us know and we can share that with you.
Yeah, one of the things we did, so they had a sort of a typical judging experience where they presented and had feedback with the judges, and received ribbon placings. But we also had a couple other things like special awards that we invited all the youth to vote on other youth. So they had to go around and determine, and they were fun categories like best use of the theme or most creative materials or best use of recyclables or just different categories that they could vote for. So we had some special things. We had a People's Choice Award. We had a award named after our Dean and Director of 4-H who had just left Minnesota to recognize innovation. And so we just created some different fun things to recognize the kids as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the volunteer support that our STEM team and staff provided to make this happen. So critical to supporting the volunteers who serve as coaches of the teams was equipping our staff, our county-based staff, who are called 4-H program coordinators, to support the volunteers who might take on this effort. So several things we did with that, we do is a regular webinar for staff to kind of give them the updates of the year's challenge and what's new and different and where the resources are, and to just equip them so they feel like they're familiar enough with the event and the learning experiences that they can support and guide volunteers. We have members of our STEM team across the state who then support staff in their region as needed in this whole process. And we also have opportunity at our annual gathering when staff are all together, which is in March or April each year, to offer trainings to get staff doing some hands-on things and experience the activity or the new level 2. So we do some training around that when we're together so that they're more familiar and more comfortable with it. So that's how we support staff to guide volunteers. And then in terms of volunteer support, one of the things that we learned from previous staff and experience was that that connection to volunteers through a phone call has been a really critical piece of our support. So we have funded one of our colleagues who isn't 100% FTE. We've funded her, Kelly Stry, who's on our call, to make those calls to volunteer coaches beginning after they register, check in, especially the new ones. So our goal is to have 2 calls to each of those volunteers over the course of the season, from when they start to right before the final experience. So that's been very informative in terms of what's needed or what's confusing or what's working well. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from volunteers saying this is one of the places where they really feel supported in 4-H through those calls and that connection. So that's been a really positive best practice we've had. We've also offered 2 coaching webinars in the springtime. So that has ranged from usually around April, May, June for the new coaches. So every team needs to have 2 adult volunteers who are screened volunteers to serve as their coaches. And so these webinars are offered for them to cover some of the logistics and registration and all the questions that they might have, as well as the resources that are available to them, like the curriculum and the handbook and things like that. And those have been positive. One way we've utilized experienced coaches is to invite them to help co-host the volunteers, co-host the webinars for the other volunteers and kind of serve in that little bit of a mentoring role and offer their wisdom and experience from having done the coaching. So that's been a neat way to utilize experienced volunteers. And then the resources, as Patrick and Brian mentioned, we have a handbook for each of the levels, and that's everything from how do you do all the registration for all the events to how do you work with a team, how do you build experiential learning and reflection into the learning experiences. In there is a rubric, a judging rubric, so teams know right away what they're being judged on and the guidelines and things. So everything's in those handbooks, and those are on our website as well. Let's see. The other 2 things listed there on your screen under resources, the level 2 activity guide is a sort of a second level, not quite a curriculum, but an activity guide that is just in final phases of development to help coaches understand what are some ways that I could help these young people understand what is fluid mechanics and practice that? What is a chemical, what kind of chemical reactions could we create, and then how we might use them in a machine. So helping scaffold that learning so that we help young people understand those elements of the required aspects for the level 2 curriculum, which is more for the level 2 project, which is more in depth. So that's an activity guide that I'm sure we will be happy to share once it's all finally reviewed. And then the other curriculum this is just a sort of a screenshot of the one page of it, and what this was really developed to do was to, again, scaffold for those level 1 teams the learning about simple machines and mechanics, and just give them some different activities and learning experiences to have, and then think about how do you then take those and use them maybe in your machine as you create it. So that curriculum is all ready to go, and free downloadable curriculum as well. And then I think that was it. You go back one slide, Mike. I think I missed one thing on there. Oh, the other support is for the judges who we invite to come and judge. And what we started doing after our first year was making sure we had a team of judges who represented not just staff, but others in the industry. So last year we were much more successful in having, and really worked at, making sure we had people from industry who were part of that team, as well as could have been previous coaches, some staff, so people who knew youth development, as well as people who knew the STEM and the mechanics of it. So it was a really nice combination. So each group of kids, when they present their machine, gets that attention from a team of 3 or 4 judges with varying areas of expertise to talk about their machine. So that's been a really positive piece, and a great way to really bring in those industry representatives. Maybe they judged one year and the next year their company was ready to help support us in some other ways. So we do orientation, have some orientation for them prior to judging, of course. That's it for me.
Thanks, Sam.
Then our participation data, one thing I'll mention too, I'm not sure we had it covered in here, but you may have noticed an interchanging of the term engineering design challenge and Rube Goldberg. And originally when we started with this, we did call it our Rube Goldberg challenge, but we've moved to strictly engineering design challenge, noting that Rube Goldberg in many different forms is trademarked. So it's now our engineering design challenge. And so this represents our participation through the years of our Rube Goldberg challenge or our engineering design challenge. And the first year that we started in 2013, our state fair, we just kind of demoed what a Rube Goldberg machine is. And then we really kicked it in 2014 and started to develop those supports. So that first row there, the first number are the total teams that participated, and then in parentheses are the counties. And I'll say we have 87 or 88 counties? I think it's 87 counties in Minnesota. So we're getting an okay participation in terms of counties. What this really represents though is the teams that came to our state event. So it doesn't necessarily give you the snapshot of all across the state, but it's pretty close. The other thing we were paying attention to, are we attracting youth that are new to 4-H? So we were, that first number there are the youth that were involved in our state event, and then in parentheses are the youth that were new to 4-H. Then we were just also, again, tracking our volunteers as well as the total number of teams. And so also you'll see the double asterisk next to 2018, and that's the year that, and we're paying attention to that, although it didn't seem to really affect things, but that was the year we moved our main state conference judging event to a facility outside of the state fair. And we did that for a variety of reasons. One of the obstacles of participating in the state fair was there just was not an easy way to get machines on the grounds. And it was a headache to get the machines on the grounds. And our state fair building really didn't have the capacity to store the machines. So they had to bring it in, set it up, and take it home with them. It was a huge obstacle for coaches and teams. So one of the benefits, though, of being at State Fair is there was a huge crowd there. There was lots of energy. Our dean loved it. It drew big crowds. It was newsworthy, and we got a lot of attention there. So those were things we wanted to pay attention to when we moved outside of the State Fair venue. So we certainly really clearly solved the problem of getting machines on the grounds, and it was really easy to get machines on the grounds. Or into the facility. And then we worked on a few different ways to replicate a high energy and environment that produced that kind of energy and enthusiasm. So the next few slides I'll talk about were really our evaluation and what we looked at. And I'll say too, when we first started our evaluation, we didn't evaluate youth right away. One of our first steps when we evaluated was we actually sat down with judges after our state events and looked for ways to make improvements to the program, really, through what judges were seeing in their conference judging. We also did some surveying or evaluating through the coaches. But this data that you'll see here comes from last year, when we actually finally did do a direct evaluation of young people. And so we were paying attention, obviously, to engineering and wanting young people to learn more about engineering design practices. So clearly this program has been helping us facilitate or foster an interest in engineering, including the engineering design process, what young people understand of engineering, as well as just a general interest in engineering. Now we're also kind of curious in our 4-H way of, is this venue helping them to pay attention to things that are happening in their community, and are they helping their community? And so again, that wasn't really a target of this program, so it maybe doesn't have as high a yield as our other the things that we are looking for in teamwork. But one of the things that we did specifically build into this program were ways to develop those communication and collaboration, and it manifests itself, or we paid attention to how that worked in teamwork, or kind of an overarching goal of teamwork. But you'll see that the metrics that we were using were those interactions between young people as teammates. And I know it's a small slide to read, but the maroon and the red are usually always responses to the survey questions. Yellow is sometimes on the very tip end, is it just didn't happen. So we were pretty happy with most of these results. It's room for improvement, though, and there are things we're paying attention to. And I think there's some other things that we're doing to support that in terms of really supporting the coaches in how do they make these relationships and these teams work better so that we get some better results, or young people are feeling that they are gaining those communication and collaboration skills.
Hey, thanks, Margot. We're going to hand it over to Kelly and Laura.
All right. So my job as a 4-H program coordinator is I am in the county, and I'm working with the teams directly in terms of promoting the program and recruiting volunteer coaches and young people who want to participate in our program. So a lot of what I do is the promotion of this activity. So one thing that we do in our county is, once we hear each year, we announce the new challenge about February 1st, and we promote the heck out of that. We talk to club leaders, we promote it on our newsletters, on our social media, to let people know what the challenge is. And for those people in our county who have participated in the past, it's kind of an exciting time. We get lots of questions. Oh, starting in about October, when are we going to hear the new challenge? When are we going to know what it is? So when it finally is announced, it's very exciting for them. But then we also have a whole population of adults and youth that don't know what our program is, what our engineering design challenge is. So we use opportunities like that to talk about what it is, and we assume they don't know anything about it, and talk about it like we are with you today, and giving them all the details about the program and how they can participate in. We do lots of promotion of the challenge and just engineering in general at different activities that we already have going on in our county. We might feature it at a county federation or county council meeting, depending on how you have that in your state. I do a lot of club visits where I just go and I bring some short engineering activities with me. And at the end of their meeting, that's the educational program for the day. We have one kit that we use is called the Crazy Contraption Kit, where it takes a variety of simple machines and it launches a pig. It's on a Velcro board. It's real easily to transport to different places. Any other kinds of things like that help kids understand what simple machines are and how they can work together to solve the challenge is real helpful. I know Brian, he has a game and with the activity with the mousetrap game. That's another way. When you're explaining to people what engineering design challenge is with this Rube Goldberg machine, they kind of think, wow, that's a lot to digest. And if you ask them, are you familiar with the game Mousetrap? A lot of them are. And so that's a real easy way to have something that they're familiar with to understand how the event works. Another thing that I do is I work with volunteers in recruiting coaches for those teams. We have to have 2 screened adults that work with those teams of young people. So ways that I recruit coaches in our county is that sometimes they come to me. I wish everyone would just volunteer directly that way. But we do a lot of talking about the challenge. A lot of times it starts from kids who have an interest and they talk to their mom or dad or somebody in their community that they say, hey, I want to do this, but we don't have a coach. So that when we have people that come to us that way, we talk about the fact that to be an engineering design challenge coach, you don't have to have any experience as an engineer or as a scientist. Certainly an interest helps, but it's not a requirement. We're looking for someone that works well with young people. We can help you with the rest of that part. About the technical details of that. But really the role of that volunteer coach is to be a facilitator on those teams to help the young people seek out the information as to where they need to find it as they're learning about the engineering design process and creating these Rube Goldberg machines. So that's very helpful, especially a personal conversation with a potential volunteer to become a coach is a great way to recruit them. You might have some volunteers that are interested in STEM programming in your counties already. That's a good way to get them to connect. And we find that we have a lot of new volunteers that come to 4-H that volunteer to be engineering design challenge coaches. That's just a great way of engaging new volunteers with the program. So a couple of ways that we grow the program in my county. We have been fortunate that we've had a engineering design challenge team since 2014 every year in our county. Many of our teams have been 4-H club-based teams where it's a group of young people from that club that are forming the team for the challenge. But we have been fortunate that we have some partnerships with other organizations in our county that have also created this experience with Engineering Design Challenge. We have 2 school partnership programs that do engineering design in school during that class time as an enrichment type programming. They are learning about Engineering Design Challenge and doing that process in school. So some of those teams have been able to participate in the statewide challenge. We also work with a after school age childcare program, which is right after school. That team has participated in the past. Sometimes our teams, even though there is a statewide opportunity for them to showcase their machine, sometimes the logistics get in the way in our county. Just due to when they meet and that kind of thing. So they are able to do a showcase at their site, depending on their participation too. So thinking about ways to reach places where there are young people in your community is a good way to grow the program too. Now, Laura, you were wanting to talk a little bit about support of teams.
Yep. So Along with Kelly, I am the other STEM team member in Minnesota that is based out of a county rather than a state office or a regional office. And so along with promoting the program to our members and to our families and volunteers and within our community and getting that program to grow, we are responsible for providing the support for the program. We are the ones that have probably the most contact with those families, those volunteers, and those teams. So our county staff are also checking in with our volunteers on a regular basis, checking if things are going okay, what other resources they might need, what other curriculum pieces they might need. Sometimes because this is a team structure, you might run into a situation where a team is struggling with that simple concept of team building and actually getting their team to work together, especially some of those younger age groups that maybe haven't had quite as much experience with that. So sometimes our role as county staff is to provide some of those additional trainings for the team that go beyond just the engineering design concepts, and get in there with some of those other pieces. We also have all of our volunteers and support all of our volunteers as they go through other trainings that are offered throughout the state on a regional level or even on a county level. Provide opportunities for mentoring coach between different teams for those coaches, whether it's a neighboring county that can kind of help get a team started in my county or vice versa. And then one of the other big pieces as a county staff person is also helping the team and the coaches to see beyond the engineering design challenge and providing opportunities and experiences for kids beyond that. What other events are we having in our county or on a regional level that the kids can participate in? Is there a first Lego League team that these kids could also jump into and get more experience? Some of our counties and areas still do our Engineer It days, which were really focused on getting those first generation kids into 4-H. So helping to identify those opportunities and promote those as well.
Okay, thanks, Laura.
Yep.
We're starting to run near the end here, so really quick, I'll just talk about partnerships. It's the great thing about this program is it opens many doors and allows for us to think about how we can grow the program outside of 4-H or use other audiences to engage youth and introduce them to 4-H. So for example, we have the Minnesota University down at Mankato. They have an engineering center of excellence. They used to do the Rube Goldberg challenge. Now they replicate our engineering design challenge. So we work with them. We use the same theme now, and it allows us to access middle school and high school kids at their event to promote 4-H. For our state event, we partnered with another university, with the School of Engineering at St. Cloud State, and then they hosted us for our state event. So it allowed 2 universities to come together to bring young people together to celebrate and share their learning. We're a new partner with the Minnesota Academy of Science and the State Science Fair. I'm going there and doing some workshops with hundreds of kids to introduce them to 4-H and show them how they can take their interest in science and engineering into another program. So just thinking about the other entities that are around and youth organizations that you can partner with. And we're really excited this year that in Penn State and in Colorado State, they're replicating the Engineering Design Challenge program in their states as well. So know that if your state is interested in doing that very thing, that you can connect with me and we can talk about kind of what that looks like for a first year and share all those pieces like we've shared with you today. So I want to allow plenty of time for questions since we have about 6 minutes left. So otherwise, if you want to connect more personally, you can reach out to my email, which I'll share in a few minutes, and I'm glad to share anything that you heard about today. So please fire some questions at us. Let's get the team here. Great. Just say maybe your name, where you're from, and then hit us up with a question. Unless we were so amazingly thorough that there are not any.
I think you were actually really thorough. So it was great to see the PowerPoint and be able to look through it like more closely. And then I probably would have more questions.
So there's my email. Feel free to reach out to me as kind of the first step. And then, like I said, we love to share any pieces of this that you're interested in. And our goal is to have it start replicated in other states. And then eventually, I mean, how amazing would it be to have some kind of multi-state event that brings you fantastic. So that's the long-term goal.
Mike, I had a question.
Yeah.
It looked like your attendance peaked a few years, or participation peaked a few years ago. And I wonder if that was related to any changes you made and how you were administering that, or if that's just been, changes in interest over the years.
You want to touch on that one, Margo?
Yeah, we've been paying attention to that too. And I don't know that I have a great answer for you. So maybe some of our other team members might have an idea as well. I think one of the things that it was still building in that year, and I know last year and in subsequent years, we haven't done as good a job to continually promote it to county staff.
I'll just add a little bit to that too. One of the things we also looked at was repeat teams, or teams that were doing that more than 1 year in that time span. And in interviewing with volunteers who were involved in that, they said it's a great program, but they also acknowledged the amount of time that it took. And so they were willing to, put that time in, but with other commitments, we lost some repeat teams or teams that weren't doing it for the second and third year. Now, saying that, there's some teams that have been consistent throughout, but I think that's an important piece to acknowledge up front with the volunteers, that there is a time commitment involved, and for them to recognize that up front.
And I would say that if you don't have kids do it every year and they only do it every other year, like, that's okay. That's still a success, because they're still having all those experiences that we want them to have. And so we would consider that to be successful too. Because as you know, there's a lot of opportunities and things they can be engaged in, not only in 4-H, but in their lives as well. So, but we continue to work with our marketing team and all other ways to try to find new ways to now get that, to grow that number every year.
Should mention that the coaches were extremely pleased with the change of venue, as Margo had mentioned. The Minnesota State Fair it's phenomenal, but it is a beast to get on and off the grounds. And when we moved to the St. Cloud location, that was a huge relief for coaches. So that's something else to keep in mind, and we're going to be watching that as we look at continued participation.